Welcome back to Face the Nation. We go now to the Republican governor of the state of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Margaret. It's great to be with you.
It's good to talk to you. You are one of the youngest, if not the youngest governor in the state, the first female governor of Arkansas. I want to ask you about a number of things, including the current Arkansas law. We've been talking a lot about reproductive health. The law bans abortions except to save the mother's life in a medical emergency, no exceptions for rape or incest. Your attorney general has twice recently rejected ballot measures that would repeal the ban and give a limited right to abortion up until 18 weeks of conception. As governor, are you open to any ballot initiative?
Look, I'm proud of the fact that Arkansas is one of the most pro-life states in the country. I'm unapologetically pro-life. I believe that we are a culture that protects life, that values life. I think that's who we are as a country, and I'll continue to support those measures.
But I know those are your personal convictions, but would you seek the opinion of your constituents on this? I mean, some of the Attorney General's objections, one of the things he objected to was replacing the word conception with fertilization, and another one, it was narrowing a medical emergency to threat to physical health and defining it just as that. I mean, they seem to be tweaks. On the premise, though, would you be open to seeking the opinion of your constituents in a ballot initiative?
Arkansas is overwhelmingly pro-life state. I'm proud of that fact. I'm proud of where we are, and will continue to push for things that I think protect all innocent human life. It's why we haven't just focused on pro-life legislation, but we've also done things in the foster and adoption care space. It's why I've spent so much time focusing on education, empowering every single Arkansan to have a great quality of life. We are looking at every aspect and making sure that we're doing what we can to protect and value life at every stage here in the state of Arkansas.
So it sounds like a no. You wouldn't want to put it on a ballot.
I'm not going to put a blanket on anything that could come forward, but as it stands right now, I haven't seen anything that I would be supportive of.
So your state, you're talking about the sanctity of life. Your state had one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the country, according to the CDC, up until about 2021. Arkansas is one of the few states that hasn't extended postpartum care for mothers. Why don't you want those moms to get care for a full 12 months, as is being offered, instead of just 60 days?
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with the premise of your question, saying that I don't want that. I certainly want us to do everything that we can to help during pregnancy and well after a child is born, which is why we have done things like focus on the foster and adoption care. We've put significant funding into our pregnancy crisis centers. We're focusing on things that help our mothers, including bring your kids to work at state government. We've expanded maternity leave for state employees. We included that in our education package. We have taken a number of steps that are very positive in this front, and we're going to continue to do that as long as I'm governor.
But the states of Mississippi, Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota, they did extend for 12 months rather than the 60 days. So I'm just wondering specifically on that option, why you opted out.
We're going to continue to look at options that we feel like best help people here in the state of Arkansas. We've done that in a number of ways, and we're going to continue to do that over the course of hopefully the next 7 years while I'm governor of Arkansas.
So I want to ask you as well about what is happening with the kids in your state. I was interested to see that you are not among the 15 Republican governors who rejected a new federal program to give food assistance to 8 million children during the summer months. You opted into that. A number of Republican governors say on premise that this violates conservative principles. So why are they wrong, and why are you okay with this federal program?
Well, I want to focus on why I think it helps our state. Arkansas in the past has ranked at the bottom when it comes to food insecurity for children. I don't think any child should ever go hungry. If we have options available to us to help improve that, that's exactly what we're going to do. That's why we've opted into this program. We're going to continue to look for ways to help and protect kids in our state. And I was proud to be part of that program, and we'll continue to look for options to help move Arkansas out of the bottom when it comes to food insecurity and into the top.
You are, as we said at the get-go there, the youngest governor in the country. And I wonder, when you look at your party right now, what does it say about the party and about our politics that not only is the President of the United States at such an advanced age, but the Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump, 77 years old here. Are these much older individuals really the new generation that you've been calling for?
I think this election right now is very simple. It's a very clear contrast. You have two individuals who have a 4-year record to run on. One has a record of success coming from a posture and a position of strength in Donald Trump, and one who comes from a position of weakness. Every single thing that voters actually care about, every single thing that drive voters to show up and cast their ballot, Donald Trump is winning on, whether it's the economy, whether it's securing the border, whether it's national security, whether it's taking a hard line against China. Every single one of those major issues that really drive voters, Donald Trump is dominating Joe Biden on, and they both have clear records in which to run from. And I have no doubt that the matchup in November will declare Donald Trump a clear victor because of that contrast.
Well, he's only 4 years younger than the president whose age you've criticized, but your predecessor as governor, Asa Hutchinson, just recently ended his presidential bid, and he endorsed Nikki Haley. He said, anyone who believes Donald Trump will unite this country has been asleep over the last 8 years. Trump intentionally tries to divide America. Do you honestly, Governor Sanders, I'm used to calling you Sarah from the front row at the White House there. Do you honestly believe Trump is going to unite the country this time, when in the first term that you were part of, the country was very divided?
You know, one of the things that I think is so often left out of Donald Trump's story is the patriotism and the love of country that he brought back. We haven't seen that in this president. In fact, we've seen the total opposite. We see people who believe in America again, who see the strength of our country. We brought back American manufacturing. We secured our border. We had a strong economy. Our enemies abroad actually feared us, and our allies actually respected us. Instead of the people now across the other side of the world are laughing at us and taking advantage of the weakness of this president. Donald Trump, you joked a minute ago, you called me Sarah instead of governor. You know, your colleagues called me a lot of other things. I'll take Sarah all day over some of the things that the media and the left called me. But when those things were happening, the person who was defending me, empowering me to do my job was Donald Trump. Well, I know that he can deliver again because he's done it before.
No, and Governor, I think we've always had a respectful exchange, you and I. So I don't think we're part of the media group you're talking about.
I didn't say you. I was
right. But on the substance of the question, in terms of uniting the country, I mean, some of the policy things you just rattled off, as you know, immigration has been broken for decades. And those border problems were border problems under President Trump. The Middle East policies he had didn't solve issues. I mean, in fact, we are seeing the conflict in Israel really flare up in a way. He didn't broker the peace deal he promised. He didn't get Russia out of Ukraine. He didn't improve relations with China. So how can you point to that as a high point without recognizing that even he says the work was not finished?
Well, that's why we need him to come back for 4 years, because he didn't get to finish, but he certainly made significant progress. Our border was far more secure under President Trump than under President Biden. I had the chance to go to the border myself, and while I was there, met with those who are standing on the front lines, including members of the Arkansas National Guard that we deployed because the federal government is not doing their job. States are having to step up. And in meeting with those individuals, they told us that more people had come across in just that month, on the terrorist watch list than in the entire 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency. Donald Trump was actually taking steps to secure our border, to strengthen our country. It's hard to argue that having a good economy, having safe and secure borders, taking a hard line against China, those are empowering
Would you be
and
his
unifying
VP
things
if
for our
asked?
country. And hold on, I want to just finish this one point. And only one of two people in the race has actually delivered on each of those things. And it's Donald Trump, not Joe Biden.
And you'd be open to vetting to be his vice president potentially?
Look, I absolutely love the job I have. I think it's one of the best jobs I could ever ask for, and I am honored to serve as governor, and I hope I get to do it for the next 7 years.
Next 7 years. All right. That sounds like 2 terms, maybe a no. Governor Sanders, thank you. We'll be right back. We turn now to our panel. Political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is up in Manchester, New Hampshire, and chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa is here with us in studio. His flight to the Granite State is later today. Caitlin, let's start with you. As we spoke earlier to Nikki Haley, the former governor, finished third in Iowa. She was 30 percentage points behind there. She's behind Trump in New Hampshire. What are the voters telling you?
Yeah, New Hampshire has always been kind of the hope for losers in Iowa because the electorate here is very different. 40% or so are registered as undeclared or independent. So that provides some favorable terrain. But I will say Republican sources that I've been talking to here on the ground still acknowledge that this is going to be an uphill climb for Haley. Yes, she's able to compete with independent voters with this message of trying to turn the page from both Biden and Trump. But it's still a tall order because Trump has such a hold on the Republican base of support here. So she will have to overperform with independent voters. And that also is no sure bet because if you remember, in 2016, Donald Trump won with independent voters. So it's a nuanced group, and she's going to have to get every last one to show up in a Republican primary.
Well, in his many criticisms, Donald Trump has said that Nikki Haley's supporters are Democrats. What's the reality of the crossover vote?
Yeah, and to be clear, Democrats cannot vote in the Republican primary here. They would have had to switch their party registration back in October. That was the deadline. And we did see about 4,000 Democrats, according to the Secretary of State, did switch their party registration to Republican or undeclared. But that's still about a half percentage point of the general electorate here. I will say, talking to supporters of Nikki Haley, I've talked to a lot of them who are undeclared or independent voters, and overwhelmingly they have told me that they believe that they see their vote as a vote against Trump, not necessarily a vote for Haley. So the enthusiasm question, are enough of them going to show up in a Republican primary?
And you'll be bringing us the results. Caitlin, thanks for that. Bob, you're here in studio as we talk about being able to motivate and coalesce around a candidate. As I asked Governor Haley, it looks like the establishment's lining up behind Donald Trump. 26 senators, all of the House Republican leadership. Why?
To build off Caitlin's excellent reporting and to go back to that question you asked, Ambassador Haley, where is the Republican establishment? The Republican establishment, my sources on Capitol Hill in both the House and the Senate, they say privately and sometimes even publicly, they no longer run the Republican Party. The voters run the Republican Party, and many of those voters are inclined toward former President Donald Trump. So inside the House, you have the Speaker behind the former president, and in the Senate, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, for example, he has said repeatedly, publicly, that he does not want to get involved in the Republican primary race. And so many donors who are sources of mine say they're waiting to see if Haley can come within single digits of Trump in New Hampshire, and maybe they will start to pour millions more into her campaign. But at this point, they're moving toward acceptance of Trump being the nominee.
And of course, Leader McConnell had a very troubled relationship with the president, the former president, when he was in office. What about Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida? Can he last? We're talking about this as a Haley-Trump matchup. Where's DeSantis?
Many Republicans are watching how he's changing his schedule, seemingly by the hour. He's trying to focus right now in South Carolina, but our reporting shows there is a debate among his allies about whether he has a path ahead and whether he should stay in the race.
What'll decide that?
It's ultimately going to come down to his conversations with his wife, Casey, and his inner circle. And it's also going to come down to money. Is there enough money to fund him going into Super Tuesday?
We've been talking to Governor Whitmer about her very key state of Michigan. What are you hearing from your sources about just the level of concern among Democrats about whether they can keep it in 2024?
Democrats and Republicans, everybody's watching Michigan. It's so important. You were on the ground there talking to Whitmer, who's on the front lines for President Biden. But also Republicans are wondering, can they start to win over suburban voters in Michigan on issues like the economy? Can they win over working voters who may not buy the Biden administration's position on industrial policy? This is the swing state. And there is concern that younger voters in Michigan, especially because of the issue with Palestine, are getting alarmed about their support for Biden.
And we heard some of that as well. Bob, thank you. We'll be back in a moment. During our trip to Michigan, we sat down with a group that included Michigan State students and community activists. 4 of them identified as Democrats. We talked about a range of topics, including the challenges Mr. Biden faces in a state that supported him in 2020.
While I'm not pleased with everything he's done, I still just think he's the better choice. He's the safer choice. He's the more stable choice.
Because you think Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee?
I do.
Tassin, you did change your mind
Yes.
on the president. Why?
I was a champion for Joe Biden until October 7th. I feel he's disowned us, disenfranchised us with his stance on Gaza.
What do you mean by that?
He's not listening to us. We are asking for a ceasefire at this time. It's a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Too many lives are being lost at this time. I was never a single issue voter. In fact, I used to argue with people not to be single issue voters, but for me, this is a deal breaker. Way too many lives have been lost.
When you say us, you're Muslim. Is that what
Yes.
you mean? You think the Muslim community here feels as you do?
Yes, I think a vast majority of Muslims, Arab Americans, even progressives who I identify myself as a progressive. And many people that I talk to in my circles are not going to be voting for Joe Biden.
Kathy, how do you feel about this issue?
Well, I feel like it's really a difficult issue, but I'm glad we have someone like Biden with his wisdom and experience trying to decide how to handle this. I believe that I like when he says things like Israel has the right to defend itself and to do what it needs to do to protect its citizens from Hamas. I think he stresses that Israel's got to be really careful not to commit war crimes. I think he's been really clear on that. I just don't know what else he can do. I think people think he has more power over Netanyahu than he does.
So abortion is legal and protected in the state of Michigan. Your state voted for that. But do all of you have any vision for what should happen at the national level? If you see Donald Trump elected, Sean, do you think that there will be federal limits on abortion access?
No, I don't believe so, because I think the court has been quite clear, and this was through their opinion in the Dobbs case, allowing states to tailor their own methods for regulating abortion, and then in the several concurrences by the justices who wrote that opinion, that it wasn't going to be federally regulated. The only way you can do that is if you change the Constitution. So I could see...
Or write a new law.
Well, they could write a new law, but unless they add it into the to an amendment, then I could see the court swiftly striking it down, like the court does with many things in either presidency for Trump or Biden. And so I'm not exactly worried about that issue. I would like to see instead what I just said, where Congress does make an amendment protecting the life of everyone, including people in the womb.
Some of the Republican candidates have different visions on what you just laid out there. You are shaking your head
Yeah,
vehemently, so
I'm sorry,
I have to. No, you feel strongly. Please tell me. How much of reproductive rights are a factor in your presidential campaign vote?
Oh, it's huge. The president chooses our Supreme Court justices. I wish I had confidence that you say in our Supreme Court justices. I think there's probably, it's one of the most important things that the president does, and that we have had justices put in under President Trump that are, really changing precedent in major ways that I find very disconcerting, and I'm very concerned about reproductive freedom in this country.
And you are as well.
Same. I mean, I think it was, looking bigger picture, just the last few Supreme Court nominees, the process was totally upended and totally disregarded. And I think it starts with that. And then freedoms were rolled back, such as reproductive freedoms. So I'm fortunate that we have protected them in the state of Michigan. I think, just again, the American people are for some type of abortion protection. Certainly there's a sliding scale, but for the federal government to just disregard that and go the other way, I think is appalling.
Saba, you said reproductive rights are a huge factor for you, but that you probably won't vote for President Biden.
I think it would be hypocritical of me to use reproductive rights as a way to justify voting for Biden when Biden is aiding and sending military aid to Israel, which is airstriking Gaza and blocking humanitarian aid, leading to women there who are pregnant, either getting C-sections without anesthesia, not being able to be provided with prenatal care.
It's interesting that, just to button this up, you are not very excited about the Democratic candidate, but I saw the both of you are excited, but I saw the both of you jump when we talked about reproductive access. That is something that's going to make you show up to vote, even though you're kind of on the candidate?
I think so. I mean, I'm certainly a frustrated Democrat at the moment, I would say. I think Joe Biden's made a lot of missteps. I think he's not a perfect man. He's not a perfect candidate, but nobody is. And I think he's done the best, but I think it's been alarming to see the things that have gone on, particularly in the Supreme Court, around things like reproductive rights. It's been alarming, and I just think it's a huge wake-up call to women, to young women.
We'll be back in a moment. That's it for us today, but before we go, Speaker Johnson's office tells us that he has not called for an absolute ban on abortion, but what he has said is that there is no national consensus on the issue, and until there is one, there won't be a bill on the House floor. Until next week. For Face the Nation, I'm Margaret Brennan.